Oh, look who it is! You. So the War for Cybertron trilogy has taken its abrupt bow, and the passage of time continues to jump scare us with the arrival of Transformers Legacy, the hot new Transformers toy line meant to celebrate bots from all walks of life. Taking characters that weren't created for G1 and inserting them into the main timeline with updated figures, and, more G1. Which is where today's robot comes from. Now let's go square dancing with Legacy Bulkhead.
I am so dumb.
So this toy is meant to represent the huge, lovable, carefree spirit that is Bulkhead from the CG animated series Transformers Prime, which began in 2010, airing on the Hub network. I admit I haven't caught up with Transformers Prime since it ended, but it was a really fun and interesting time in the Transformers scene. Dark of the Moon was around the corner, the Revenge of the Fallen toys were still really fresh, Transformers War for Cybertron was coming out along with the game's toy line, and that era saw the release of the first ever Generations figures. It was, as they say, a time. But anyways, my Transformers Prime knowledge is a bit rusty, but this version of Bulkhead was very much like Raphael from Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, ready to fight but huggably wholesome. However, Bulkhead as we know him today was created through the previous Transformers cartoon, Transformers Animated. He was pretty much a wholly new character shoved to leading status after Zero presence in Beast Wars or G1, and I love his character in Animated so much. I love that he was a huge, loving, gentle soul. I love how he always stood up for his family. I love how he was voiced by Patrick Starr.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
I love how he wanted to express his artistic side. It was a beautiful creation. That show is the reason I love Bulkhead, and I feel it slightly affects how I feel about this figure. So getting into the actual toy itself, it is square. Geesh, Patrick, I thought SpongeBob was the square one. Does that joke work if this one wasn't voiced by Patrick? He's definitely taking fashion tips from Grapple and Inferno, making his torso area the entire front of his alt mode. I understand this character redesign has caused a bit of discussion within the fandom for reasons I'll explain later, but for now this is a super exciting and appropriate way to adapt this character for reasons I'll explain later. The windows are massive, giving me nostalgic MP1 vibes. The shades of green they went with is super attractive, a bit like peas, and complements the black bumper beautifully. Also adore the stunning, subtle, metallic blue headlights, which are sarcastically really small. He's like a large cube that his limbs revolve around. Speaking of which, he's wearing some considerable and considered limbs. They are kind of just basic rectangular robot limbs, but they keep things interesting with the splash of silver, the intriguing engravings, and the abundant supply of weapon ports. I'm so glad they kept that from the War for Cybertron trilogy. And this hulking bulkster is seriously supporting some sensational articulation. The joints feel great and sturdy, and it really brings this figure alive. Plus, this toy has one hellbow of an elbow bend. Unfortunately, I don't think he can hug very well. And coming to the head sculpt, oh yeah! This is working. I love it. This is perfect. It evokes the character spectacularly with the prominent chin and the green helmet. There's so much personality packed in there, and it's really what ties this thing together as Bulkhead. Giving the accessories a glance, he comes with this translucent blue machine gun. I don't really think of machine guns when I think of Bulkhead, but this looks good enough as a standalone piece. The translucent blue makes it look very alien, like it's powering off Energon, and the metallic gray is painted well. Next there's this awesome Wrecking Ball Mace weapon coming in like Hannah Montana. It's so specifically Bulkhead, and the way this works is super clever, yet simple, with it just splitting open and sliding over the hand. But I notice he has weapon ports on the weapons, and frankly, I'm not sure how to use this. Is this good? Is this what's cool now? It definitely glows up when you add multiple weapons though, which leads us to this tarp thing. Tarp thing! It pegs in effectively on his arm as a shield, which is very unique and creative in terms of alt mode integration into the robot, and it stores effectively on his back when it's time to relax. I guess it looks a bit flappy, but it's unobtrusive, and I suppose it had to go somewhere. But rounding off the robot form, this is pretty great. It gives off the character so well, at least to me. Like it catches your eye in a group photo and you immediately know who it is. It is kind of getting in on Hauler's bit of being a big, hefty green rectangle robot, but like, who cares, it's Hauler. The transformation is about what you'd want from something like this. It's not difficult, and I'm really intrigued by how the legs work. The arms can be a bit fussy untabbing from the torso, but they fold into the cab really satisfyingly. Like everything just fits together, but not in a scary way, but in a kind of way. Also, important to note, there are tabs on the bottom of his legs that are supposed to make getting the heels out easier, which can be easy to miss. I think my favorite thing about this conversion though is how elegantly and effectively the weapons snug away under the tarp. But getting to the alt mode, Bulkhead turns into a Raba H-18 heavy utility truck. I definitely knew that before looking it up. And truthfully, this thing does such a great job at capturing this character's vibe. Like it's big and hefty and all business, but it's also pretty cute with the giant expressive windows, the endearing shade of green, and the appealing cubic shape of it. It reminds me of Red from the Cars movies. More like green. This is where I feel there's a bit of an animated influence in this toy, because the Prime Bulkhead turned into a pretty hench-looking truck, while this here is a tough rectangular block of a military vehicle, much like animated Bulkhead. I suppose I wish there was a bit more variety in the colors. It is pretty much just green, gray, and black. A smidge of brown would have worked nicely. And I'm not too crazy for the somewhat exposed legs. With the tarp on, it's alright, but when you take it off, he's just kind of shining the full moon at you. And without the tarp, it doesn't look quite finished. But look, those are just little things, alright? Overall, it's a super lovable vehicle mode that lives up to it being a robot in disguise. It's not setting the world on fire, but it doesn't need to. It's good, and I'm not sure what else it needed. Plus, it works wonders when you put them next to some other Autobots. You can give a retro flavor to both the Prime and animated teams. That's awesome! And it contrasts itself with the other flashier car-type Autobots just by sticking out and being his loud self. So rounding it up, this is a pretty satisfying alt mode to an ultra satisfying figure. I get that part of this toy's gimmick is the fact that it is Bulkhead, but it being a great, solid, blocky Voyager class figure works wonders, and I adore how Bulkhead can now fit in with the rest of the main Autobots. But stay with me on this, there's something I want to get back to. Let's talk about the discourse surrounding this toy. Alright, so apparently we have some Bulkhead truthers in the Transformers fandom. When this toy was first revealed, people were stunned we were finally getting a new Bulkhead. But there were a few voices out there bemoaning that this isn't round or closer to the original Prime design. And look, if you don't have the original Prime Bulkhead toys, I sort of get it. They're not super easy to come by these days. I think the main reason people felt that way have to do with the timing of this figure's release. Like when Revenge of the Fallen Lockdown released, nobody complained about that toy not looking enough like the animated version, because at that point the animated toy line was still pretty fresh, and people knew immediately that toy was meant to be a fun experiment of what if Lockdown was in the movieverse, you know, before that actually happened. But this is Bulkhead's first Voyager figure since 2012, so I think that's what made this disappointment hit even harder for people who weren't looking for this in a modern Prime Bulkhead. But firstly, I think the original Bulkhead toys are so great they didn't need an upgrade. Even the regular Robots in Disguise release is a top tier figure. And look, maybe Prime fans don't know what they have. Hey, I'm a hardcore Transformers animated fan, and the amount of modern merch we get for that show is a fat nothing. I mean, at least you guys get this and RC and some Red Rep and some re-releases of figures that were originally impossible to find. Animated fans don't even get scraps! So many people shake their heads over Hasbro being too reliant on G1, and here they are finally branching out into Beast Wars and the Unicron trilogy, and people still complain because it's not 100% accurate. And I feel the exact same way about Legacy Metroplex. You mean Hasbro is dedicating this year's ultra high-end big deal Titan class toy to a Cybertron character? And you all have the nerve to be upset because there's no Cyber Planet key? Guys, these are supposed to be fun toys. Nerds have it good, don't we? We've gotten spoiled. There are people out there moaning on Twitter about how this doesn't look exactly like the Prime version of Bulkhead, and here I am absolutely gushing about it because it reminds me of the animated one. Look, all I'm saying is, there's nothing wrong with a little perspective. And this isn't trying to be a direct translation of Prime's visual aesthetic, this is trying to be a fun experiment of what if Bulkhead was in G1. And I'm the type of person who judges something for what it is and what it's trying to be rather than what I personally would have preferred. And to that end, I believe this toy succeeds heavily on its own merits. It's well made, it's fun, it has a ton of presence, and it looks great in a squad. And I am so moved just knowing that this happened. A character given prominence by Transformers Animated and Derek J. Wyatt's amazing design that paved the way for this character and other forms of Transformers media, which leads us to this toy. He wasn't just a brief character around for a few years, he's still here today. Bulkhead has a legacy. And I really do have so many fond memories of that time, honestly. I remember sitting in my basement catching up on Transformers Prime, occasionally sticking around to watch Goosebumps reruns they would air immediately after, along with those really entertaining bumpers they'd play in between shows, as well as really getting into My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, another Hasbro show that aired on the hub, browsing through the local Toys R Us looking at the hot new Generations toys back when it was just called Generations. This toy just makes me think of that time period back in the early 2010s. So on its own, Legacy Bulkhead is an awesome, lovable toy, but if you're anything like me, it's something my Autobots have always needed. Welcome to the family, Square Man! So to all those watching, please look after yourselves, and goodbye!